What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's happening with the market moving forward, but just note that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link. If you deposit any amount of money, you're guaranteed 12 free stocks. If you deposit $500, you're guaranteed 20 in total, and put in $25,000 or more, and you're guaranteed 75. The offer ends in just 4 weeks. Anyways, the market is shuffling right now. We saw a bit of a pump and drop like move after we got our data, and so far the market's attempting to hold up, but it's still kind of flat. So I'll be watching to see what happens in just a couple of minutes. But I first want to talk about what happened with the data. So we have the ISM services data. The PMI report was above expectations, showing some strength in that particular sector. However, I just want to mention that our business activity was once again a little bit stronger, but employment was kind of weak, and then everything else was decent. So most of the data was aligned with expectations and decent. Employment was a little bit weak. And this is significant because the market liked the data. We saw a little pop once it came out, only to start dumping. So just because the data comes out doesn't necessarily mean it's credible. I wouldn't necessarily trust everything about it. And simultaneously, I just want to mention that even with this data that's coming out, right, you have to remember that just because one sector looks decent on paper does not necessarily mean the economy is strong. This does not account for manufacturing and other factors like that. So that's why the market kind of popped and dropped. When we popped, right, SPY attempted to try to break its 20 EMA, this 569.7 area, very close to 570, but we weren't able to sustain that level. We weren't able to hold above 570. We rejected again very close to where we rejected yesterday. So that's a sign of weakness. And if we do end up getting a follow through move to the downside, this excuse me, this would be a little bit more bearish because what happened was we had this high up here on SPY. We came down, made a lower high, came down. We could be making a lower high here in 570 before we continue to dip lower. There is a risk of that looking at the chart, so watch for that very, very carefully. So what do I see right now? We're trying to hold our 50 EMA at 567.78. Not sure it's going to hold that too well. If we lose that, we're looking for 566.8 as the next support. So, excuse me, let me just try to mark these levels. It's a little bit easier to see. So basically, we're trying to hold 568 to 567.8 is our support. The next support below that is 566.8. If that fails us, I see a risk of us coming closer to about 565. So I'll be watching every single one of these levels. We also have resistance all the way up here around 569. But overall, this is still looking more bearish as we're making lower highs and lower lows. So I think that there is a risk of SPY dipping all the way down to 565 again. If that fails us, we're looking for 562. However, right now, we're not necessarily dipping really hard. We did pump and dump when the data came out, but as you guys can see, SPY is just shuffling. So if you look at the chart like this, we're kind of going back and forth between these levels. So we pumped, dumped, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That's all SPY has been doing so far. And we're going to likely continue to do this for a large chunk of the day. It is possible we get a rejection here, dip back down, but like I said before, we're not looking too great. We're just kind of shuffling, not doing much. So I think there is downside risk if we lose key levels. Otherwise, we're just shuffling for now. For other factors out there, we have ES. The same thing is going on. We're just shuffling. We pumped to about 57.70. 5, we dipped back down to about 57.30. Then we came back. We're still stuck in the middle, and we're going to likely continue to chop for some time. But then there is that risk of downside that's still there as we get closer to the end of the day. So just be very mindful of that. For Nvda, we attempted to push all the way up to about 124 into the 124s, only to dip back down. So we have support at 122. If that fails us, we're looking for basically 120. So I'll be watching to see if we get that rejection. We did pop very nicely, only to dip back down. So we'll see what happens from here. For Bitcoin, we look a little bit more bearish, so we're still trying to drop. So we're looking for 60,000 as our main support. If that fails us, we could be dipping all the way down towards about the 59,000 area, but we still kind of bearish on Bitcoin, so be very mindful and careful. We'll see how we end up reacting to 60,000 if we could hold that, but we still look more bearish. For Tesla, we look a little bit more bearish, but here's the thing. We have two supports which are worth watching. So we have this previous resistance becoming support right over here at 244, and also 242 is where we have the daily 20 EMA. So watch 242 to 240 as support on Tesla. If we lose that, I think we could fill the gap down to 238. Otherwise, we're just going to shuffle for the time being. So there's going to be a lot of shuffling between those levels, but there is that downside risk. For NQ, we look more bearish. We're kind of rejecting many times. We have not been able to hold above 20,000, though. We came close only to reject. So if we don't hold above 20,050, we're likely going to continue to dip back down to 19,800. The market's kind of shuffling, but this does still have risk to it, especially as we have a head and shoulders. We still have these imbalances and a gap to fill below. So there's risk of downside, but it's going to take some time as they're chopping the market around for some time. For the QQQ, it's showing more strength than SPY because we're seeing Meta holding up and other stocks are still decent. So Nvda, Meta, and a few more are holding us up. We have resistance around 483.5 and support at 481.5. If we lose that, I'll be looking for 480, 478, and 475 as supports. As of right now, we're just shuffling, but I'll have to give this some time. I think that we will eventually come down to fill this gap in the 475 area over the next couple of weeks. For Apple, we look a little bit weaker. We're looking at 224.5 as support. If that fails us, we're looking for that gap fill closer to 222. For the IWM, we're looking for some more downside. We basically have 215 as support. Resistance closer to where this gap is. So basically, resistance is around 216.8. If we lose 215, we're looking for a dump. So I could be looking for some downside, especially as we have this gap to fill. But we'll see what kind of reaction we get this from here. For Coinbase is looking a little bit more bearish. We'll see if we end up losing 162. If that fails us, we'll be looking for a dip down towards the 160 area. We have resistance around 170, by the way, but I think that there is a risk of downside. For Amazon, we look more bearish. If we can't hold above 183, we're going to likely be dipping all the way down to where this imbalance is towards 178. So look at 182 support, 180, then 178. Meta is trying to rebound. This is what's helping the markets, the QQQ especially, alongside Nvda. We're looking for 580 as our resistance. If we break through this, we could try to push for 585. If it rejects, we're looking for 572 as support. As of right now, it looks a little bit more bullish for that 580 target. Microsoft is looking a little bit more bearish because of the fact that we haven't been able to hold above 418. We're looking for this imbalance, which could take us to 414. Google looks so. It's trying to rebound right here, so it could try to fill this gap for about 167, but then we'll see if we get a rejection or not. With that being said, guys, the market is still shuffling, SPY shuffling at 568. We attempted to pump to 570 only to reject back down, so we're not doing the best job. For now, look for some shuffling, but there is still downside potential looking at the broader charts. With that being said, I just want to say I really appreciate you guys so much for listening. One more thing I want to call out is SPY's weekly charts. So far, the weekly looks a little bit weak, but it depends on tomorrow. If we do get another sell-off tomorrow, this could turn more bearish. We could be looking for a bigger dump next week. If we hold up, we'll see if the market consolidates for a little bit longer for anything else. But this is what the weekly chart's looking like. It's still holding up on the weekly. But there will be more risk of downside if we get a weak close tomorrow. So that's going to be very, very important. All right, so we'll see how things go. The market is still bearish overall. We are shuffling for the time being right now, but things could turn south as time goes on. As we approach like tomorrow, going into next week, there's still that there's still that downside risk, which is very, very important. All right, so have a great day, guys. Make sure you watch your levels very carefully. I'll be back in a couple of hours for another update. Until then, have a great day and peace out.